My name is Andrea Bartz. I am a New York Times bestselling thriller author. My fifth book came out just 2 weeks ago-ish, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's called The Last Ferry Out. Oh, you haven't switched, so you're not backwards like me. I need
Well
to
done.
learn how to do that.
No, you actually look. Oh, that's my kitchen. Sorry. You look. You don't look backwards to me, so you're
Oh,
good.
okay. So you don't look backwards to me. It must be, I didn't realize this. It does mirroring for yourself so
Okay,
that you
good.
don't freak out. That makes sense. Because whenever I do have mirroring on, I'm like trying to figure out what's left and right.
Mhm.
Um, yes, The Last Ferry Out is my new book. It's about a grieving woman who travels to a remote tropical island where her fiance died in an accident a few months earlier. She falls in with an enchanting group of expats there who knew her fiance. But while she's there, the more she sort of gets to know them, the more she begins to suspect that her fiance's death might not have actually been an accident, and she might be trapped on an island with her partner's killer. So it's twisty, it's queer, it's kind of a puzzle box thriller. And yeah, I'm excited for it to be out in the world. I'm excited to be chatting with you today.
Hey, I'm excited that you're here today to teach. Yeah, I'm going to introduce myself. Hopefully, my. I mean, I'm assuming my readers know who I am, but I'm hoping to meet some of your readers. But I write the Substack newsletter Dinner Love Story. It was a blog in its previous life, and I write about the family meal, however you define family, however you define meal. But I also do a lot in the 15 years that I've been writing some version of Dinner Love Story. I write a lot about books and reading. It's a real passion. I hate that word, sorry, but it's a real love in our family. And it's one of the things that we talk about the most. My husband's in publishing, my children love to read. So I'm always so excited to talk to writers like you. So I'm delighted to be here. And I have a secret agenda, which you don't even know about, which is I want this to be hopefully, if anyone out there has ever been like, I want to write a novel, I just don't know where to begin. That's me too. We've talked about this separately, but I have actually tried to write novels like several times, and I'm just an absolute failure at it. I don't know how to do it. I really feel like even my agent is like, "You should write a novel. You have a good voice." And I'm like, and I believe her every time, and then I just can't do it. I'm like, I just stare at like it's tabula rasa whenever I sit down to try to do it. So that my secret agenda is to get you to motivate me and anyone else watching who has always wanted to write. Um, um, I want you to cheerlead.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I love cheerleading. I love advice giving. That is what my Substack is all about. Get it right. The publishing industry and craft stuff and everything that authors and aspiring authors want to know. I saw that, yeah, Rob said that that's almost me. I know you are not alone. You should definitely write a novel. You can totally write a novel. You're a writer. We both have magazine editing backgrounds. We both like are used to, producing under deadline and that kind of thing. But okay, my question for you is where does everything break down? Like, do you write a few thousand words and then putter out? Do you not feel too overwhelmed to start? Like, what actually happens?
Um, I never write a few thousand words. I never really get. Um, I don't know. I use prompts a lot.
Yeah.
I bought that Suleika Jawad book with all the writing prompts and the essays, and one of my essays is actually in there. And yet it still doesn't inspire. I
Good
just
work.
My big problem is like I'm the worst kind of aspiring novelist, which is I just want to write a novel, but I don't have a novel to write. At least like you would think what makes me think I have a novel in me? I don't know, just because I write about food. There's no relation. Anyway, but I do want to say I love your Substack so much because it disabuses anyone of the notion that writing is easy or romantic or fun and that where ideas just come and you're such a realist about it um and I just appreciate that because it makes me feel less alone, even though I'm like I don't want to call myself I can call myself aspiring, I guess, um but like how did we both started in magazines, and I remember when I met you we like had all these we had all these people in common, and then you were like, oh, and now I'm writing thrillers, and I was like, what? How did you go from like writing for Self and Vogue and women's magazines and service writing? How did you go to writing fiction? I want to hear the story.
Yeah. Well, so I worked in women's magazines, as you said, and they just like kept folding. Some of them while I was there, some of them immediately after I left. I don't know if I was everyone's bad luck charm, but I kept getting laid off. And then I would like freelance in the meantime while I looked for a new job. And at my last company, I was at Natural Health Magazine at American Media, and I loved the team I was working with. And the magazine was growing, and we were like, we're doing great. And that was when they threw our whole subscription base in to sweeten the deal when Shape sold to, what was it? Shape sold to Fitness or something like that. Like, they just folded the magazine because it was doing well. They're like, great, here's a few thousand more subscribers. You're folding.
Oh my
So I was
God.
laid off again,
Uh-huh.
and I was freelancing and applying for stuff. And I was high enough on the masthead that, there weren't a lot of jobs at that level anymore. And I felt like I needed it was just so upsetting to like go into work on a Tuesday and find out everything that I loved working on was taken away from me. And I was like, I need something that's mine. I need something that like I could put my heart into and like have some ownership over, and not find out on a random Tuesday it's gone.
Hmm.
So at that point, I had a few friends who had written novels, and they suggested some books to read. And I have told you to get Save the Cat Writes a Novel. It's a very seminal one for me. It really breaks down 3-act structure if you want to just understand like the shape of um, the modern American novel. It's a really good starting point. So I read that. I read The Anatomy of Story by Jonathan Truby, which really helps you figure out sort of like character development and theme and sort of drill down to like what you're trying to say. And I just started writing. I did National Novel Writing Month back in 2014. And at the end of it, that's where you try to write 50,000 words in a month. And I think I wrote 40,000 words in a month. And then I was like, well, I have to finish it now because I'm 40,000 words in. I'm like almost halfway there, which
50,000.
nobody
Is 50,000 like a magic number for a novel that I should know?
50,000 would actually be like a novella. I don't know why they picked that. I guess it's just like
Okay.
difficult, but like doable. I could not do it now. I don't know how I did it then. But a novel is usually like 75 to 100,000 words for an adult novel. But I just felt like, hey, I'm like halfway there. I have to keep going. I'm most of the way, which was actually absurd. I was on step 2 of like 1,000, but that sort of
What have you got?
uh, that sort of hubris pushed
Mhm.
me through so that I finished a draft, and then had beta readers read it and edit it. And then I went through when the manuscript was in good shape. I was like, okay, well, let's see if I can get this published. And I went through the whole rigmarole of writing a query letter, researching literary agents. You need a literary agent if you want to be, in traditional publishing, not self-published. There's sort of the gatekeepers there. Found an agent, and
How
she
how did you
found.
find that's a big obstacle for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. So I signed up for Publishers Marketplace and started reading like the deal reports regularly and just seeing like who was making deals in my genre, which, for me was thrillers.
Yep.
I also like went to the library, or maybe it was a Barnes and Noble, and I went to every book that I had read and loved. Well, I used my own bookshelf, but also went to the store for all those library books and looked in the acknowledgement section for who they were thanking, because everyone thanks their agents in the acknowledgement section.
Mhm.
And I also used, at the time it was on Twitter, because this was 2016, hashtag MSWL manuscript wish list. I think, I am not, don't quote me, but I think agents are still like sharing what kind of stuff they're looking for with that hashtag, probably on Instagram, I think on Threads.
Okay.
But I just started looking at like who is requesting stuff like what I write.
Yeah.
And had a really big spreadsheet keeping track of who was open to queries and what they were looking for, and started, sending out my pitches, which was
Uh,
really scary, but a necessary step.
yeah. And then and then what happened when did you just go with the first agent to accept, or how did it play out?
Yeah, great question. So I got actually my first offer of representation was from somebody I had not queried. I had queried somebody pretty experienced at a big agency, and she was like, "Hey, this is a good idea, but like not for me. However, we have like a junior agent who's looking for this kind of thing, and so I'm sending it on to her." And that sort of worked in my advantage because she was like new and young and
Yep.
hungry and like looking to build a list.
Totally. Yeah, that's amazing.
So she was the first one to make an offer. And then sort of decorum states that when you get an offer, you can go back to everyone else that you've already queried, not new people, but people you've already queried, most of whom will not have gotten back to you yet because this happened pretty quickly. And you can say, hey, I have an offer of representation. As a professional courtesy, I can give you a week to review the manuscript if you'd like. And then a bunch say no at that point. It just sort of like shakes the tree and suddenly everyone has to answer you. So a lot of
Yeah,
no. And then I got
amazing.
a few more, yeah, requests for the full manuscript. Um, and then that got me two more offers of representation. So I talked to all three on the phone. I talked to some of their current clients. I asked questions like, what kind of, how would you position the book? Like, what's your vision? What kind of edits does it need? What sort of editors would you be, thinking of sending this to? And then, picked one and signed with her. And I'm pretty unusual in the industry because I've had the same editor and agent for all five books. So I've like
Wow.
worked with the same team
That,
throughout. So I think I got very lucky. I mean, I guess I don't know what I'm missing, but I
yeah.
I love them
Oh,
both.
why mess with something that you like? Yeah, I've had
Yeah.
different editors, but I've had the same agent, which has really been nice. But
How did you find your agent? Did they come to you from the blog?
no, I hadn't had I started the blog? No, I hadn't started a blog. I had just again, I was working in magazines and one folded. It's a familiar story, and I had realized how much I wanted to write about food because I had been working on a project similar to you. Like I was working on something that was really exciting when it folded, and I was like, I really want to just. It was like a cookbook that was it was like a branded cookbook with the magazine I was working for, and I was like, I just really want to write a cookbook. I just figured that would be the next step, and I also had I don't know how much you know about my about this, but I keep a dinner diary, so I've written what I've eaten for dinner every single night since 1998, which is like we can discuss the pathology of that later. But I knew that I wanted that there was some book idea in that, and so I just sort of started. I didn't even have Dinner Love Story the blog at this point, but I started meeting with agents, and I kind of knew them just because I'd been in publishing for a long time, and I'd worked with some of them in my capacity as a magazine editor. So I just started
Mhm.
there. I was lucky enough to I didn't have to cold call many people, and then um, I met with a couple who just kind of dismissed it out of hand because they were like, "You have no platform. You'll never be able to sell a book." Which, now it's just like, yeah, like I hear that all the time now and it makes sense to me. It's still depressing. But back then I was like, so outraged by it. Oh, you can have this brilliant idea and then like just because you don't have a like you can just reject me out of hand like that. I was so offended. But the agent who I ended up signing with was the only one who actually liked it. But I remember she held my diary and she was like, "This is incredible. I will represent you." Like she just said it, and it was like 2 minutes into the meeting. It was Elise Cheney at Cheney Literary, and she doesn't even. I think I'm the only cookbook author who she represents. She might have been about it more as like a memoir kind of thing, which it ended up being. But anyway, I just remember just feeling like, wow, that was I. She just gets it. She got it immediately, and that was so important to me. And also she's just like I knew people who she represented and I just asked around a little bit and I remember like one of my friends being like she will get back to you like she's so good at getting back to you about getting back to me. She replies to every single email, every single phone call. Like it was just a very little thing, but I guess that is
Yeah.
not very common in our business. And anyway, it's all borne out and it's proved to be true. She's been like just a real advocate for me and yeah, I mean, I need to figure out my next book idea. Hopefully you'll have that for me by the end of this conversation. But all I've written five books and she's represented all of them. So
That's
yeah.
incredible. I mean, I feel like it's great actually that we both have sort of the two extreme situations because people will assume that since I worked in magazines, like, oh, you must have met your agent through that. And people also have this false idea of like that, like you get an agent because of who you know, you get an agent by, who you've schmoozed with or who your friend like, can put in a good word or whatever. And I was in the slush pile. I was like a true
Yeah,
like,
it's
you know,
incredible.
in the slush pile with everyone else. And in my experience, like having a friend recommend you or something can
Mhm.
certainly get your query read. If you're doing the querying process, can get your query read more quickly, move you
Yeah.
up the pile. But like an agent is not either way. An agent, whether you know them or not, or you're just in their slush pile, an agent's not going to sign someone like as a
No,
favor to someone else or as a favor to
no.
you. Like they're only going to work with you if they
Yeah.
think that they can make money off you and love what you're doing.
Yeah. It's
So
better to just
yeah.
be case. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. It's so crazy to me also that kind of to take this in a different direction that you never really left service journalism and that you're like writing not thrillers, but you're also writing about writing fiction. You know what I mean? Like you're giving advice. So you're like still a service writer in the and you write about writing. It's like such a
Very meta.
I love it. And like, do you have a favorite? Because I do say like when you ask me what trips me up, I always feel like I end up when I'm trying to write in a creative way, I always end up wanting to like make it about the reader or like I'm like, what are getting out of this? I'm like it's so baked into my writing brain to like as a service writer that like I just am I boring someone? How is this going to help someone's you know how is this going to affect their lives? How what's the takeaway? All these like little things that I learned in my like in my magazine career. Um,
Oh, that's so interesting. Because what you're doing is still that with the Substack of like, yeah, providing people with like takeaways and actionable stuff or just like
yeah,
improving their day.
yeah,
I think maybe the fact that I have the Substack, which is and I do this like on social media too, but like sharing advice and I think there's not a ton of authors who do that in like a I don't know. I think like candid and accurate way. So I was like, oh, I have a unique skill to do this because I'm a service journalism uh, alum. Um, but I put all of that into that. And then when I'm writing a book, I like can't, it's not that I can't think about the reader, but it's like I have to live in the story. And so, I mean, what we're bringing to the world as artists is so sort of like, I don't know, ephemeral and like hard to define. And like, like a product needs to fulfill a need, but like what we do as artists needs to like do something bigger and make people think about things differently. And like it is important. I absolutely think like, oh, all art is political. And if that weren't the case, then like the powers that be wouldn't be working as hard as they are to like silence artists everywhere, especially us writers. Um, but I think, yeah, you have to find a way to just silence for me, it was all about silencing the critic of like, this isn't good enough. And I think for you, it might be about silencing the what is the reader going to get out of it? Like that element of
it all
thinking about it being read.
like I don't um I just don't know how to pivot to a voice that doesn't sound like I'm writing dinner love story, and maybe it doesn't have to be. I don't know, but then one of my favorite procrastinating tools for writing is reading my favorite writers, which is a good which is good advice, I'm sure anyway, just for anyone who wants to write. And
Okay.
that ends up sounding like them, I'm like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the
You're a
crowd.
mimic.
And it's just I don't know. I really I don't I'm kind of half kidding that I want you to convince me to do this because I also know how brutal it is and I don't find the writing I don't find the writing that I do now to be particularly painful the way that a lot of writers do. It's very I mean certain ones, certain kinds of like essays and I get stuck obviously, but I have it down to such a rhythm and a it's such a different kind of writing than it's kind of a genre that has emerged in the last 20 years, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
in a lot of ways I don't think of it as like a real art form, even though
Okay.
of course
Okay.
but you know what I mean? It's just like
Yeah.
it's very it's just such a different style. That's all.
Okay. What if I'm going to push back against the idea it's not a real art form. It sort of reminds me of how, I mean, I've read entire great books that are like epistolic. They're all in either kind of like ephemera, found footage of like newspaper articles and letters and emails and whatever, or they'll be all letters back and forth. That was sort of the thing before social media.
Mm,
What if, and I'm just let's just play this out. This doesn't need to be your book,
well,
but if this would relieve the pressure, what if you decided you were going to write a thriller that's about a cookbook author and newsletter runner, and
mhm.
it's all going to be told through her newsletters to readers, and everyone begins like, hello readers, or however it does. And you're
Right.
tracking the story through that, but
Oh,
it's still a voice,
right.
and some mystery emerges. Her skills as a chef and lifestyle writer and observer are going to like come into play. She finds herself in the midst of something and because it's sort of a confessional first person sort of newsletter. I still call them blogs. Like we kind of do
Yeah.
blogs. They just show up in people's
No,
inboxes. It's fine.
maybe she's the murderer, the news, and she's
So
dropped.
maybe you're including the comment sections, and in the comments, people are trying to figure out. People are trying to like solve the mystery
Maybe
and point out inconsistencies.
maybe you should write it on Substack and just use me as the co-byline.
You are very resistant to the idea of actually playing around with some fiction writing, is what I'm
I
seeing.
I love it so much when you like suggest these ideas, but I know myself and like I mean I'm also like very ADD. I shouldn't say that because I'm not actually like clinically ADD, but I have a hard time paying attention, like sitting down. Even when I write my newsletter, it's not like I sit down and then write the whole thing. I'm writing it kind of all week long here and there, and then it's a real process that's like it's not a straight line. And so
Yeah,
it's also demanding. I write twice a week. I was writing 3 times a week, writing for Joanna at Cup of Joe. And so
right.
I just was like I just felt like I could never get out of that headspace to like really work on a novel. But I kind of feel like, is that BS? Like, is there a proper headspace? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like you sit down and you write, like wherever
Yeah,
a lot of people are like, that's just not an excuse.
yeah. I think it's not an excuse. I'm gonna
That's,
I'm gonna take that
I
position
think,
with a lot of understanding and empathy about that feeling too. But I mean, there are days that I'm like in the zone and like words are pouring out, and that's so delicious and great. And then there's many days where it is like absolutely pulling teeth to get 250 words down, and that's done in like maybe 380-word bursts. Um, but the words add up. I mean, I think you probably get when you're deeper into the story, like you sort of get into grooves where you can do more at once. But like I never feel like writing. I never like feel like sitting down and like, oh, can't wait to get the words out today. It's that the act of sitting and writing
so
sort
fun.
of kicks off the inspiration, right? Like
Yeah.
inspiration follows action.
Yep. Totally.
Um, so I don't know if you could, even if you thought of it as like you're going to do, maybe you tell yourself it's a short story so that you don't have to worry about it being a whole novel. And you're going to start it in the style of Substack posts or blog posts or whatever you want to call them. And you just like, I'm going to try to do one a week, like
Yeah.
just a few sentences here and there if it needs to be.
Yep.
And then like see what happens. I mean, here's an important question. Like, do you have, I think you've said you would be interested in doing a thriller, right? Like genre wise.
Um, I mean, I'm not against it, but that is not the way I was leaning. I have a very skeletal frame of a story idea, and that's kind of it. Um and so yeah, and I don't know. I don't know where I see you can see I can't even talk about it. I don't even know what to say. I have an idea. That's where it ends. But
Do
like
you have a narrator in mind?
no, I have no idea. I don't like just the idea of you coming at it from that perspective of like a newsletter, right? Like it never occurred to me that I could just like have, just, and I'm a huge reader. I've read all
Yeah.
these books that have a million different approaches. Why can't this is, I don't want to make this all about me. I want to know what, like, do you go to certain writers when you're like feeling stuck like I do? Like, are there books that you're just like, you read and reread, and what are they?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Or
I want to
voice.
say first that I think a lot of people's first novel, their main character and often narrator, like ends up being the most like them, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. Like my first book was like a single woman in her 30s who partied really hard in her 20s and lived in Brooklyn and worked in magazines. Like it's basically a thinly veiled memoir, except for all the murder stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and through that book, I mean, you learn how to write a novel by writing a novel. Like that is your MFA right there. Um, so I think if it sort of reduces friction, like, yeah, make the narrator similar to yourself. How would you react in this situation? How would you handle these big questions. I think there's no rules. This is my takeaway for everyone here. If you want to write a book, like just go do donuts in a parking lot. Like go write. Just figure it out as you go. Take off your critic hat. Take off your what if this doesn't sell, or what if people don't like it, or what if the reader doesn't feel like sufficiently they got a takeaway from it. Just get
I,
stuff down. In terms of voice stuff, when I get stuck, I don't know. I actually have to be careful about reading other people's work too, because I'll start to mimic it in a similar way, and I'll like later come across a paragraph and be like, "Oh, I had picked up some Sylvia Plath again, haven't I? Hadn't I?" At that point, that's not great. I mean, when I just want like really chewy, beautiful prose, when you just need it to like hit the spot, I feel like the ones that I keep going back to just to like pick a random page are The Bell Jar and The Virgin Suicides, Jeffrey Eugenides. Just in terms of like just interesting prose and interesting, fictive language and stuff.
never read Virgin Suicides. I can't believe that. Now I think you're inspiring me to pick.
It's really short and like just spare and perfect and I don't know, delicious. It's
There,
probably problematic. I haven't revisited it in whole in a while, but
I like
um
described as spare, I would say.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's just very economical in how the story is told, and I just love that. But no, what I do more and what I thought you were asking first is like I go to if I'm really stuck, I go to other writers who are friends and I'm like, "Hey, I'm stuck on my book. Can you help me figure this out?" Um, and I think that's big too, is like telling people about your ideas, having friends in the community, kicking things around with them, because there's something really powerful. I mean, we just did it where you were like, I never would have thought of doing it from that perspective. Like
Right.
somebody else looking at your idea is just going to see it in such a different way and not have all the emotional attachment to it.
Yeah.
So it's like way easier for another person to be like, oh, why don't you just do XYZ? And you're like, oh my God, I never would have thought of that. It's really
And are you in like a formal writing group at all, or like have you ever done a writing workshop, or how do you feel about those?
I haven't. And I think they probably are really great for some people. I just have a few like trusted friends and kind of crit partners where we're reading each other's stuff when needed and talking about stuff when needed. I have organized some writing retreats, which I thought was incredibly fun because again, like service journalism, Andy, like can't
Yeah.
wait to
Do you
can't
do
wait to help people with their stuff.
you do that through Substack?
No, it actually is fairly unrelated to the Substack. I've only done it twice. I'll probably do another one this fall, but I do it at our house in the Hudson Valley, and it's like a daytime thing. So we have like craft lessons and one-on-ones and activities, and then it sort of like ends at dinner time, and people can do whatever they want for dinner and at night and stay wherever they want. Because I wanted to do retreats, but I like couldn't crack it. I was like, I don't have a bunk room. I don't know where people are going to stay. And finally, I was like, wait, they can stay wherever they want.
That's
This
such
was a
a
huge breakthrough. But I think writers groups, I don't know, I've heard of people like finding their lifelong beta readers and crit partners in like, media bistro courses back in the day and like taking these, Sackett Street writers. I don't even know exactly what are the big ones now, but I think the value of doing in-person retreats, in-person events, in-person workshops, like yes, you get to work on stuff and learn stuff, but also we were talking about this before we started the live, just like being in community with other people is so huge, and especially doing it in person. So if that's like something you're missing, if you feel like you're looking for writing buddies in real life, like
yeah.
go see if there's events at
Yeah.
the library or local
It's
coffee
like
shop.
yeah, for me. Just to see people more and get out of my own head and out of my own. I mean, because when writing is so lonely sometimes, so like it just I like that advice a lot, and I don't know who the community is. I guess like I guess I have my like little circle of people I know would be my trusted readers, but they all have real jobs and probably don't want to meet me like on a Tuesday at 3 o'clock.
Well, anytime you want to meet me on a Tuesday at three
Yeah,
o'clock,
I
I
might.
feel like this. Go,
Mhm.
I was going to say too, I feel like the Substack thing is especially kind of a mind F, I'm not going to swear, because what we do is so community building anyway. And I do feel really close to my readers and I feel like I know them. And when they
Yeah, yeah,
comment, I feel like we're really engaged. But like, it is still by definition all of us looking at a screen, right? Like we're not connecting in the same way. And there is something very special about yeah, in-person community. So something you really have to seek out. And that's something we probably both really liked about magazines was like you were just with creative people
Oh,
all day. Like
100%. I
I think
still that to this day, and I try to recreate it, just in my own way, but it's never the same. Magazines were, I mean, and now like we're going down that road, but it was just everything I learned about writing, I learned in magazines. It's still like everything is relevant. It's crazy for, um, that I learned in 1999 is I think about, like, I hear my first boss giving me advice when I'm writing today in 2025. It's like, especially with service writing. So,
yeah. Well, wait, can you share that? I really want to hear that actually, like for the benefit of me and the audience members, like what are some of the, I don't know, storytelling lessons that you took from 1999 magazine
in
editor
a
that you're
story
still using?
is a stretch. I would say storytelling is something that I had to find through the medium of blogging and now news, because it's, I guess if you think about it, I don't want to be like too grandiose about this, but like the whole medium of being a blogger or a newsletter writer, I guess whatever you call it these days, is like you're trafficking in your own personality. So you're telling your own story.
Hmm.
So that kind of informs, and it's also just like how much of yourself do you want to give?
Right.
Weird line. And so, a lot of people come up to me and they're like, I feel like I know you, you're my friend. And it's funny because I'm like, I don't feel like I share like super personal things in my life, but you can share a lot without sharing everything.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm just thinking today, I wrote a story about a tortilla español that I had at a Midtown lunch place with my two friends. And it just like led me down to this path of discovery of like making my own and finding it. I actually had written about the same exact one like 13 years ago. I had forgotten about it. But like I could just give the recipe, right? But like instead I put it in that context. That's not like the most riveting page turning story, but like it gives a sense of like, oh, I had like, this is my new life in the city. I went to lunch with my friends in Midtown. Here's a restaurant recommendation. And if you're in the theater district, like just kind of all these subtle little um links to things
Hmm.
that are all like they're on purpose because I want people to. I just feel like if I'm just gonna be like me the whole time, I want to at least make sure that someone else's like life is being improved somehow a little bit because of it. It just feels, otherwise you're just like, what? It just feels a little like empty. Um, and so that's service writing. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
and to answer your question about what I learned back then, I didn't really learn about storytelling as much as I learned about just like really like classic service writing. And for people who are listening to this and asking like, what the heck is that? It just basically means like, um, it's like writing that not for like an intellect, or reading not for an intellectual pursuit, but like when you're reading like lifestyle stories, like food, design, um, I don't know, beauty, like it's all the classic verticals of women's magazines, like where you're reading something and you expect to get something out of it, some takeaway that will make your own life a little better, a little happier, a little
Mhm.
different, something that sort of hooks the reader to come back next time. And that was so baked into us as magazine editors. I worked at Real Simple. That's where I learned most of my lessons. And I had a great boss who was just, she had all these like little pithy sayings that I literally still think about. But she, she would say, I just used this line today with someone who I was talking to. She said, "We are not about covering the news. We are about how to handle the news." Just
Mhm.
like we were writing through 9/11, and it was like we were just like, who are we? Why are we writing about garlic presses? Like, and like the world is falling apart. And it's still very relevant today too. And it's like you can't just ignore that the world is you know e- exploding outside your door. But you also like, there's a role that you can play that's more effective and that's more helpful. And so anyway, I think about that every day. Um,
I
and
love that.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I don't know what else to say except for I do. I love service writing. Like, it's weird that that became the thing that I did,
Yeah.
but it's like a nice, back then we were never, I don't know if you remember this in magazines, you were never allowed to use we, like, or you were never allowed to use I, it could never be personal. And it was always such a struggle to figure out how to do that. And then so like when blogging started, it was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
what
It's
made,
all about me.
yeah.
This
So,
is so interesting
mhm.
because I will tell you my shortcut for how I describe service journalism for the uninitiated, which is that I say everything is a how-to in one form or another. It's like how to find a great restaurant, how to
Mm,
make
yeah,
a good Spanish, uh, tortilla español, that kind of thing. So that's what we were out there doing. Everything had like some takeaway where your life is improved by the time you get to the end of an article. But what's really interesting is that, when I read Dinner a Love Story, which I love, like you said, like people feel like they know you and like your personality and sort of seeing the world through your eyes is a big part of the appeal. And like I feel like I'm with you as you like go to the farmer's market and like, start putting together a meal based on what's looking fresh and good. Um, I think and so as you were saying all that, I was thinking, oh my God, that's exactly like what novelists need to do, which is that they need to be vulnerable and they need to be willing to put themselves into it and they need to trust that the personal is the universal and like that sort of candor and vulnerability is what really works in I think blogging and newsletter writing and also in novels and what sort of sets your work apart from everything else because there's a billion thrillers out there right now, but like nobody can tell a story exactly like me, right? Like the
no,
more of myself I put in it, the more sort of unique it by definition has to be because it'll be more weird and more filled with all of my neuroses and psychoses. But then you sort of turned it on its head and said, so everything has to come back to like service and like not about me, but like helping other people out. But I think you're neglecting how much people are reading your words and reading your and like guys back me up in the comments if you would like, but people are reading your stuff because they want to be on a journey with you. They want to hear
totally.
about
And
your experiences and you being real about stuff.
I want to pretend that that's not a big part of it. And I do like, it's like why my paid content is usually like more personal, where I can go a little deeper, just because it
Mhm.
helps for me to have that little bit of a guardrail, just because
Yeah.
not as big of a community, and it feels like a safer space, even though I don't really know why. That's just me telling. But yeah, people. I'm always like, oh, when I do write about, like, I just wrote a story that I like made my daughter read because I was like, do I think I'm an influencer here? What am I doing? Like, this felt so weird because it was all about how I work out. Like, now I have this new routine for working out where I exercise 3 days in a row and I take one day off. And it's all about like making it up and whatever. But it's just like, it's crazy because it's the first time a routine has I've been able to sustain it for like in a
Yeah.
real way. And so I was like, I kind of feel like I want to share this. And then I wrote about it, and it was obviously the whole thing was takeaway because people would say, oh, maybe I'll try that. But it was a very like navel gazy, 500 words. But it did really well. Everyone loved it. So I was really happy.
Hey, this is where, yeah, I mean, Suzanne's agreeing with me. The more vulnerable we can be. Um, yes, like people,
Uh-huh.
sorry, I'm like reading as I try to
I,
speak and that throws me off. But this whole fear of navel gazing that I think was maybe instilled in us in magazines, I think we have diagnosed why you are so resistant to actually starting the novel that you say you have sketched out and want to
oh,
do.
no,
It's a
no,
theory. It's a theory.
tell me.
I mean, what do you think? Is it kind of
No,
a discomfort with the idea of like
maybe. But
doing
like
this
it's the whole,
pursuit that's sort of
yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe that's it. I do want to hear questions from people though, that I feel like enough about me, enough about you. Uh, Also, I don't want to pretend that I'm like not writing about myself all the time because I am, but I don't want to,
Yeah.
obviously that's what a blog is, but, and yeah, story, like without the personal and the storytelling, it's just a recipe. It's just
Right.
a list, so obviously. Anyway, okay. Anyone out there want to just like throw a question into the field, the write a message field? I think that's how it works.
I
Or
think so. I think you can write messages.
you'll have
I,
to, hopefully we can read it because we only can see it for like a half a second before it disappears. But
yeah. Well, we can scroll back,
oh, we
but
can.
I see, but very tiny. It's very annoying.
Okay.
I see some nice very sweet messages from you guys, but no questions, which is fine. Um, but yeah, I mean, if anyone also wants to use the message bar to just tell Jenny that she's not navel gazing and we do want to hear more from her, back me up. I
Definitely
don't
don't.
think she's believing me, you guys. I don't think she's buying it.
I don't know. I know I'm not, but yeah, no, I really appreciate your cheerleading. It's no wonder you're so good at what you do. Um,
Write a book. Write a book. Well, you write books. Write a novel. Write a novel.
well, we'll see. Okay. I think unless like yeah, is there anything we haven't covered? I don't know.
Think so. I mean,
I want to make
yeah,
sure.
thanks again for having me on. And like anyone looking for a sort of twisty puzzle box thriller, check out The Last Fairy Out. If you already follow me and don't follow Jenny, please do. If you are interested in more intel on the author life and you don't already follow me, join me on Get It Right, my Substack, WRITE. But yeah, this is really fun, and I think I'm gonna keep now I have more ammunition to keep
I,
bugging you to start
yeah,
working on that
well,
manuscript.
I was vulnerable with you, and see what. So you can't accuse me of not being vulnerable. I just have to
That
do.
is very that is very, very accurate. That's what we made happen. And that's
Well,
what I love. That's what we're in it for.
well, thanks so much. This was really fun, and thanks everyone
Thanks
for.
so much.
If you missed it or if you tuned in later, both of us will be posting this on our Substack, so you can catch up with the beginning. But all right, everyone, thanks. Have a great day.
Have a
Bye.
great day. Thank you.